Hey guys, Ashok here, and I thought I would do a video tutorial on setting up the special edition of Enderal Forgotten Stories for VR. If you're not familiar with Enderal, it is a very story-driven Skyrim total conversion which was originally developed by a company called Sure AI for the original release of Skyrim, otherwise known as Old Rim. In more recent history, Enderal was ported to the Skyrim Special Edition by a fantastic team of modders who have also just brought the game over to Steam. And separately from that, another modder named Sasa2727 has just released a new VR patch for Skyrim VR, which allows us to experience Enderal from start to finish in virtual reality. And what's even more exciting is if you followed the Skyrim VR scene as of late, you should know that there has just been a huge renaissance of really amazing mods for Skyrim VR that have come out just within the past few months, such as VRIK, the new Higgs mod, the Spell Wheel mod, all of which add some really cool features to Skyrim VR, such as inverse kinematics, in-game physics, gravity gloves, and a new user interface for interacting with your inventory in a way that's very VR friendly. So when you take all these features and you put them together with Enderal's fantastic story-driven, narrative-heavy single-player campaign, you end up, in my opinion, with a perfect storm where Enderal VR is one of the best AAA VR games to beat right now, right up there with Half-Life Alyx. So in this video guide, again, I'm going to show you how you can get this really awesome game running in VR from a clean installation. And once we get done modding Skyrim VR to run Enderal, I will also separately be showing you how you can further patch the game to improve your VR experience using a couple tools such as Synthesis and Nemesis. So this is going to be a fairly involved video. We're going to be covering a lot of things. If you don't want to watch the whole video, I will tell you up front that everything in this video will be summarized in a readme.txt file, and you can find a download link for that readme in the video description below. Also, you will need two things before we get started. Number one, you will need the VR edition of Skyrim, and number two, you will also need the special edition of Enderal Forgotten Stories, which is a free download on both Steam and nexusmods.com. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to steampowered.com in your web browser, and you're going to want to search for Skyrim. Make sure you select the VR edition of the game. And I already have it installed. Note that this guide is expecting that you are installing a clean copy of the game that does not have any other mods installed. If you have the game pre-installed and modded, it may not work correctly later on. And once you have the game installed, I would also recommend that you actually launch the game in your headset one time. I don't know if it matters, but I have heard that some people have had trouble later on if they haven't launched the game at least once. Once that's done, go ahead and download Enderal Special Edition. Again, you can get it from Nexus Mods or Steam. I'm actually going to use the Nexus Mods version just because I find it a little bit easier to set up. Although later on I will show you guys how you can use the Steam version as well. So we're going to go over to nexusmods.com/Enderal Special Edition. On this page, you're going to want to select Explore All Mods. Next, select page 2. Scroll down a bit. You want to select both Enderal VR along with Enderal SE. On the Enderal SE page, you're going to select the Files tab, and you want to download Enderal SE using the manual download button, and you're also going to download the Enderal SE update from the manual download button. You do not need the Skyrim DLC placeholders, so you can go ahead and skip that one. Once those files are downloaded, select Enderal VR, select Files, and you're going to want to download the Enderal VR patch using this manual download button. You do not need the Enderal LE Steam Achievement or the Enderal VR Patch 2 files, so we're just going to go ahead and ignore these two. And I already have these files already downloaded, so in the end you should have Enderal SE Update, Enderal SE, and Enderal VR downloaded to your computer. Now, separately from these three files, you are also going to need 4 additional files that I have uploaded to Google Drive. You can get the download links in the video description below. So again, download .NET SDK 5.0, Mod Organizer 2, Mod Organizer Repack.rar, and Skyrim VR Repack.rar. We'll be using those in this tutorial video, and again, the download links for those 4 files are in the video description below. Now, I should also say that while you can download Enderal from 2 different places, nexusmods.com or Steam, I have heard that even if you get the game from Nexus Mods, you do still need the game in your Steam library. So we actually want to come back to steampowered.com. Even if you choose not to download the game from here, you do want to again search for Enderal, select the special edition of the game, and at a minimum you do want to at least add it to your library, even if you're going to install the Nexus Mods version. Once you have all of that done, then we are all set to go ahead and begin the modding process. So before we get started with the modding, it should be pretty simple. As a summary of what we're going to be doing here, modding Skyrim to run Enderal is essentially just a 2-step process. Number 1, we're going to be installing a small assortment of mods to our Skyrim installation folder. And then number 2, we're going to be installing a separate set of mods to a location outside of our Skyrim folder, and this location is actually going to be managed by a program called Mod Organizer 2. And if you're wondering, wait a minute, why would we be installing mods to a separate location than our Skyrim folder? As a general rule, you really want to keep as many mods as possible in a separate location from your Skyrim folder, just because it's preferred to keep your Skyrim folder as clean and as pristine as we can. That way, during the modding process, there's a minimal risk of your Skyrim folder ever getting, corrupted and nuked. So again, once you have all of the files we've discussed above downloaded, the first thing you're going to want to do is navigate to the files that we've downloaded from Google Drive. You're going to actually want to right-click on Skyrim VR _ repack.rar. You can actually right-click and hit copy. Now we're going to navigate to Program Files, x86, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim VR, and you're going to want to paste this repack file here, right-click and hit Extract. And when you're prompted to replace any files, you're going to want to actually hit Yes to All. Okay, so what we've just done is we've actually just we've gone ahead and extracted several essential mods to the Skyrim installation folder, including SKSE, Engine Fixes VR, binaural 3D audio, Dragonborn speaks naturally, the Sharper Eye mod, and we have also installed 2 utilities that we'll be using later as well. Synthesis and Nemesis, which we will be using to patch the game with some additional features which really are going to enhance the VR experience. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to go back to our Google Drive files. We're going to run mod organizer 2. Hit I accept and click next. You can actually install this tool to any location you want. I'm going to put it in my games folder. You can select next with the default options selected. Click next. And I'm going to go ahead and create a desktop shortcut. And then go ahead and click install. Okay, when it's done, go ahead and click finish. If you get an error message, just click OK. And if this window comes up, great. If it doesn't, then you should see another window asking you if you want to create a new instance, and you just want to tell it yes, create a new instance, and when this page pops up, click next. Now on this screen, you're going to want to select global instance. This allows us to actually manage our mods in a folder which is separate from our mod organizer installation folder, and this just makes it easier for managing all of our Skyrim mods. So go ahead and select global instance. Now when you see this page, you actually don't want to select Enderal. You actually want to select your Skyrim VR installation folder. So you're going to actually click on Browse. Now you're going to navigate to your C drive, and we're going to go back to Program Files x86, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim VR, and you're going to go ahead and hit Select, and then click on Next, then Next, Next, and Finish. Okay, you can click No on this prompt. We don't need to see the tutorials. And if you're asked if you want to set up NXM links, you can just go ahead and click Yes. Alright, so now we have Mod Organizer installed. This is a program which will allow us to install and manage most of our mods for Skyrim VR, including setting up Enderal Forgotten Stories. Now you should see on the right-hand drop-down bar that we have something called SKSE selected. And if you see this, it means that everything has been set up correctly. So we will go ahead and actually close out of Mod Organizer. The next thing you want to do is you want to navigate to your Mod Organizer folder. So you're going to go to C:, your username. You're going to have to go up one directory to a folder called App Data. It may actually be hidden, so you may need to type it in manually. Next, you're going to actually go to Local, and then you're going to select Mod Organizer. This is the global folder that we've created where we're going to be installing all of our additional Skyrim VR mods. So what you're going to want to actually do is open up your Skyrim VR folder. You can delete your profiles and mods folder. Once you've deleted those folders, you can navigate back to the folder where you downloaded my files from Google Drive. You're going to want to right-click on Mod Organizer Repack.rar and click Extract. Once everything is unpacked, go ahead and open up your Mod Organizer Repack folder, and then navigate to these new mods and profiles folders. You're going to select them, right-click, and hit Cut. Then you're going to actually go back to your Mod Organizer Skyrim VR folder. Go ahead and right-click and paste these folders back in this location. Okay, next, you're going to go ahead and launch Mod Organizer. And you'll see that we now have all of our mods for Skyrim VR installed and pre-configured. So you don't actually have to use my repack files. All I've done is I've downloaded all of the most essential and most popular mods for Skyrim VR, which are Enderal compatible, and I've put them together in one package so you can easily install everything with just a handful of clicks. But if you don't want to use my repack, you can actually download all of these individual mods and install them yourself from nexusmods.com. One thing to note is if you choose to download everything manually yourself from Nexus Mods, note that for the Embers mod, the USSEP patches, and SMIM, you will need to delete any ESP files that are in those folders for those mods, as they are actually known to actually cause problems with Enderal. But you don't actually need those ESP files, so they can be safely deleted for those specific mods. Now, one thing I did not do is I did not actually prepackage the actual files for Enderal, because Enderal is being frequently updated, so it's really best that you go ahead and download your Enderal files directly from either nexusmods.com like we've done, or from Steam. So what you're going to want to do now is navigate back to the files we downloaded from Nexus. So we're going to go back to where we downloaded those 3 files, and we're going to install all of these files into Mod Organizer by simply dragging and dropping them into the left-hand window pane. So first we want to install Enderal SE. So we're going to just drag this over to the left pane here. Now you want to actually release the file at the very top, and then click OK. This may take a few minutes to install. Okay, and once Enderal SE is installed, you're going to go ahead and copy the Enderal SE update file into Mod Organizer by just dragging it and dropping it. Make sure you release it right underneath Enderal SE. When it asks you to enter a name, we're going to actually rename this Enderal SE-update, and then click OK. And next, we're going to install Enderal VR Patch. So go ahead and drag this over to the left-hand window pane. You want to install this right underneath Skyrim VR Tools. Hit OK, and you're going to want to go ahead and enable these 3 mods by ticking the corresponding tick box. Now, one thing to note is that while most of your mods can be installed in any order, the mods at the top must actually be in a very, very specific order. You always want to make sure that Enderal SE, Enderal SE Update, Enderal SE Bug Fixes, SkyUI, JContainers VR, More HUD VR, Skyrim VR Tools, and Enderal VR are always installed at the top in that exact order. Also, based off of the mods that you have installed, you'll have another list of Skyrim plugins that will show up on this right-hand window pane. Also over here, the order is not terribly important for the most part, but Enderal Forgotten Stories.esm must be at the very, very top. So we're going to go ahead and move that right here to the top of the list, right above Enderal SE bug fixes. And then we also want to make sure that Enderal VR Patch.esp must be installed underneath AHZ-more. And you always want to make sure that, again, Enderal Forgotten Stories.esm, Enderal SE bug fixes.esp, SkyUI.se.esp, AHZ-more-HUD.esp, and Enderal VR Patch.esp are at the very top in that exact order. Also, if you look at the bottom here, the Enderal SE Bears of the North through Amanda patches, these are all plugins that are specific to Enderal, and you always want to make sure that your Enderal plugins are at the bottom of your list, as I have already done here for you. One more thing to note is that if you select Tools, and then select Tool Plugins and INI Editor, you will see that there are INI settings for Skyrim VR.ini and Skyrim Prefs.ini. I have already pre-configured these files for what I would consider an optimal VR experience. If you choose to not use my repack files, these files will not be set up, and I would also recommend that you go ahead and fill them in with my settings here, and this will configure the in-game settings for a VR experience. Once that's done, you actually are all set. Now, if you scroll down to the very bottom here, I also have installed a mod that will actually replace all of the spiders in the game with wolves and bears. So you can just go ahead and tick this mod if you have arachnophobia and do not want to play this game with spiders. I'm going to go ahead and untick it, and we're actually all set to fire up the game. So that is really everything you need to know about getting the game working in VR. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run up here, and we should be able to jump right into Enderal VR. And we are in game, guys. You can actually go ahead and hit Explore Enderal, and then hit Yes. And we are successfully playing the Enderal Special Edition in virtual reality. Now, I know I did tell you guys earlier in this video I would show you how you can optionally get this game up and running using the Enderal SE files from Steam. If you choose to do that versus downloading Enderal SE from Nexus Mods, what you want to do is navigate to your Steam folder. Again, that's going to be under Program Files, x86. Steam, Steam Apps, Common, and if you've downloaded Enderal Special Edition from Steam, okay, you're going to actually want to open up the data folder here, and what you will do is you will navigate back to your mod organizer Skyrim VR folder, which is under your users folder. You're going to go ahead and open up mods, and instead of installing Enderal SE through mod organizer, what you would do is you would actually have this folder come up as blank, and what you would do is you would create a new folder called Enderal SE, and you would just copy all of these files over here, but you don't actually need to install Skyrim animations through Skyrim textures. So you would go ahead and cut all of these files and then paste them to Enderal SE. But again, you can skip Skyrim animations through Skyrim textures, and the end result is now the same, except you downloaded the game from Steam instead of Nexus mods. So again, if we were to fire up Mod Organizer, and hit run, we will see that the game will actually behave just the same by copying over our Enderal SE files from our Steam folder instead of downloading the files from nexusmods.com. And there's really no benefit to downloading Enderal from Steam, aside from the fact that Steam does seem like it downloads a little bit faster. I know the Nexus servers sometimes go down, or they can just be very slow, in which case it might be easier to just get the game right off of Steam. Then I will hit Explore Enderal, and we are in game. Now, before we get too far into the game, there is just one more thing to note. I'm going to go ahead and quit the game here. One thing that you will want to note is that while the game is now completely VR ready, you could play through it from start to finish, there are actually 2 mods which are actually not currently active. That is the Flinching for VR mod, and also the SkyVRaan mod for Shimmering VR waters. These 2 mods are actually not active right now. They are a little bit more complex to set up. We have to actually patch the game using 2 separate tools, Synthesis and Nemesis, to activate these mods. They will actually greatly enhance your water with shimmering effects, and they will also add in-game NPC animations. Both of these are really essential in my opinion. They really are going to enhance the VR experience. But anyhow, this actually concludes the first part of the video. This should summarize everything you really need to know to get Enderal VR running in VR, and I will be showing you in part 2 of this video how we can patch the game with Nemesis and Synthesis to add shimmering water effects to the game and to add NPC animations into the game for a optimal VR experience. Hey guys, welcome to part 2 of this video guide. In this section, I will show you how you can patch Enderal VR with both shimmering water effects along with NPC animations on collision with melee weapons and with fists. This will give you much better immersion when playing the game in VR. To get started, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and close out of Mod Organizer 2 if you have previously had it open. You're then going to go back to the folder where we downloaded our Google Drive files. And you want to go ahead and make sure you install the .NET SDK 5.0. So go ahead and click Install, and then hit Yes. Also note, if you have any previously installed versions of older .NET runtimes, you do need to actually uninstall them. Once the installation is done, you can go ahead and hit close. One thing you can do is if you want to go to your command prompt here, if you type in cmd and hit enter, you can type .NET space -- info, and you should be able to confirm that in fact .NET runtimes are installed for version 5.0. And once you have .NET up and running, then you can actually go ahead and go to your Documents folder, and you're going to want to open up My Games, and open up Skyrim VR, and you actually want to create a blank file called Skyrim.ini. Now, I don't actually know if this step is critical or not. I don't know if you have to do it. On my setup, I actually could not get this process that we're about to do to work without creating this file. So go ahead and do this just so we don't run into any trouble. And then you can go ahead and open up Mod Organizer. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be patching the game using Synthesis to basically enable SkyVRaan, which will give us shimmering water effects. So go ahead and click on the Data tab here. You're going to double click on Synthesis, then right click on synthesis.exe and hit Act as Executable, and then click OK. This is going to add Synthesis to our drop-down bar here. Go ahead and hit Synthesis, and then click on Run. And if .NET is installed correctly, you should get a new window that comes up. You're going to want to click Skyrim VR here on the far right-hand side. And on the screen, you're going to want to select Git Repository. And then you're going to search for SkyVRaan. And then you will see something called Auto Patcher and Weather Patcher. You're going to first click the plus symbol next to Auto Patcher. Now go back to GitHub repository. We're also going to search for SkyVRaan again, SkyVRaan. We're also going to hit the plus symbol next to Weather Patcher. And then go ahead and wait for the process to complete. And then when it says ready, you're going to go ahead and click the Run button. This is going to patch the game to enable SkyVRaan. And wait for it to say completed, and then you can actually go ahead and close Synthesis. Now, one thing I will note is I have heard some people say they've had troubles where they get error messages when they're patching the game. If that happens, there's usually two things that will usually fix it. You can, number one, click back, and I have heard that some people have had to make sure they have set mutagen and synthesis to latest. That sometimes fixes the problem. You can also try clicking on Skyrim VR, and some people apparently have had to manually enter in the data folder location, which is going to be the location of your Skyrim VR data folder, which is actually going to always be in C:\program files x86, Steam apps, common, Skyrim VR data. Some people have reported, seen online, that they have had to manually enter this location here under Skyrim VR data folder location. So you may not have to do this, hopefully not, but I just wanted to point out a couple tips here to work around a few errors that are commonly experienced by other users. So anyways, once you have the game patched, you can go ahead and close Synthesis. And when we run Synthesis, what it's going to do is it actually generates files in our mod organizer to overwrite folder. We actually want to create a mod using these files in our overwrite folder, so you're going to actually right-click on overwrite. You're going to hit create mod, and you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it synthesis output. And then go ahead and click OK. And then go ahead and click the tick box next to synthesis output. This will enable the mod that we've just generated. And then if we actually go back to the plugins tab, we'll see we have a new plugin for synthesis. And this is going to allow the SkyVRaan mod to now work. And this will add some really, really beautiful shimmering water effects to the game that really, really enhances the game in VR. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add NPC character animations in the game. So we're going to go back to data. You're going to actually look for the Nemesis engine folder, double click it, right click on Nemesis Unlimited Behavior Engine, exe, hit add as executable, and then click OK. Now select Nemesis in your drop-down window, and you're going to go ahead and hit run. You'll get a warning, this is normal, don't worry, just hit OK and OK, and you're going to want to click on Update Engine. Okay, next you're going to go ahead and tick Flinching Animations. Now click Launch Nemesis Behavior Engine. And this will patch the game with new animations on collision with NPCs, so you can actually hit NPCs with your fists or with melee weapons, and they will actually react with a flinching animation in game, so you really feel like you're actually colliding with NPCs, during combat in VR. Okay, once you see that everything is complete, you can go ahead and close the Nemesis Unlimited Behavior Engine window. And then we're going to do the same thing we did before with our overwrite folder. You can right click on overwrite. You're going to hit create mod, type Nemesis output, and then click on OK. And then tick Nemesis output. And now you want to go back to your drop-down bar here in the upper right, and you want to make sure it is set to SKSE. And you are now all set. Your game should now be fully patched for both shimmering water effects and flinching animations. Now we can go ahead and click on Run. And we are now in game, and if we look in the distance, we see that we have some beautiful shimmering effects in the water. You will not have any of these reflections if you did not patch the game using synthesis just now. I'm going to go ahead and actually load another save up just a little bit further. We are at the campsite with Finn. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to equip a melee weapon. And as we can see, we now have NPC flinching animations whenever we have collision with melee weapons or with our fists. So that concludes the second part of this video tutorial, guys.
Hey guys, for the final part of this video, I'm going to go ahead and do a showcase demonstration of some of the most popular mods from Skyrim VR, so you can see how they work in Enderal. I'm also going to give you some tips on how to make sure you get the most out of Enderal when playing it in VR. Before we get started, I'd also like to go ahead and just go through a couple bugs in the game that you should be aware of before trying to play the game in VR. So number one, just note that your headset and your VR controllers must be active before you try to launch the game or it actually will not start properly. Number two, just note that the cutscenes in this game actually do not play in VR. You'll get audio, but you'll only get a logo on your screen with no video. However, there's only, I believe, 3 or 4 cutscenes in the entire game, and they're very short. It's really not a very big component of the game. You can actually just watch the videos on YouTube, or you can also open up the Bink videos from your Enderal SE folder on your hard drive, and you can just watch them in a regular video player of your choice, like VLC. But again, it's a really small part of the game, and it really should not be a big deal breaker. Number three, just be aware also when you start a new game, if you look down, you will not actually have a player body. The game does not actually give you an avatar until you complete the opening tutorial and finish the character creation wizard. Number four, there's actually one really nasty bug in particular that you should be aware of regarding dialogue with non-player characters. If you're having a conversation with a character and you actually push a trigger button while a character is talking to you on your controller, it can actually inadvertently cancel the dialogue options, and then the game will not give you the ability to continue the dialogue options. It's going to actually soft lock your game, and you will not be able to continue. So you just want to make sure that you save often. If you accidentally click a trigger on your Oculus Touch or your index controllers and you cancel out of dialogue prematurely by mistake, you're going to have to reload a save game to continue. So just make sure you don't hit a trigger button in the middle of dialogue with some of the non-player characters. Number five, there's also a problem where occasionally in some of the quests, you will find that you may not be able to actually proceed due to certain animations that just don't trigger properly. If that happens, usually you can work around it by simply entering the council in the game. You can access the council by making sure that you select the Enderal window in Windows with your mouse, so the window is in the forefront. Then you can press your council or your tilde button on your keyboard. That's going to actually bring up the council window, and if you ever have a problem where certain animations don't trigger, causing a quest to not advance, you should be able to type player .tai and then hit return, and then that should hopefully allow the quest to continue. If that does not work, simply reloading a save game should allow everything to actually fix itself, and then you should be able to continue properly. And finally, there is one more issue you should be aware of. If you're playing the game wirelessly through virtual desktop, you may notice that the very edges of the screen have a little bit of a blur around them in a sort of rectangular shape. That's actually very normal. It's not a bug. It's just something due to how virtual desktop renders the game with its foveation. And you can actually notice some of the same issues with a bit of a blur in the edges when streaming, and a couple other VR games as well. I believe Pavlov actually has the exact same issue. However, I find the anomaly is actually, very, very subtle. And I'd also like to note that this game runs absolutely fantastic in virtual desktop. This is an incredible game to play wirelessly and untethered if you're using the Oculus Quest 2. And I also would like to just go ahead and note that when I put together the mod list in my repack, I made sure not to select any mods that affect frame rate. So this game should perform very well for you with my setup here, and it should actually run exceptionally well if you're using the Quest 2 with Virtual Desktop to play the game wirelessly. So that should be a synopsis of the big issues that still exist with the game. However, I find these are all mostly small issues with simple workarounds. The whole game is fully playable from start to finish, and having said all that, let's go ahead and let's get started.
Okay, so when we jump into the game here, we'll see that the graphics actually look very, very sharp. If you're wondering, where do you actually change your game settings, just note there are actually 3 different places where you can configure different in-game settings for Enderal VR. Number 1, you have your actual menu settings, which you can access at any time by pushing the Y button on your keyboard and then going to System. You can then actually go down to Settings here, and you'll find all of your in-game settings on this menu screen. Most of these should be fine at default. I have everything pre-configured for a good VR experience, but just note that under VR performance, you always want to make sure that dynamic resolution is off. Temporal AA also should always be disabled at all times, and you also want super sampling disabled, which means the bar will be at the leftmost position. And if you're wondering why we want to disable super sampling, which we often would always want enabled in most games to have the best graphics possible, we're actually handling super sampling with a mod that we've installed called the Sharper Eye. And to access the super sampling settings that are associated with the Sharper Eye, that is actually something you can access by pushing the home button on your keyboard, and it will actually bring up an overlay which is managed by something called Reshade, and you can actually tweak additional visual settings through your Reshade menu by hitting the home button on your keyboard. Although the default settings should be fine, you really shouldn't need to make any changes there. And finally, last but not least, you can also make adjustments to your installed mods through this mod configuration option. So we have what's called the mod configuration menu, the MCM, and we can also tweak all kinds of settings associated with the installed mods. So you should be able to jump right into the game with default settings, and everything should actually be configured for you for a really good experience. So let's check out the game. I actually would also like to note that sometimes when you jump in, you might find that your player height is incorrect. And if you need to adjust your height, you can actually do that in-game through the VR IK calibration power. So what you can do is you can push the X button, you can go to Magic, and then you can actually select the VR IK calibration power with your upper trigger button, and then you can use your lower trigger button to use the height calibration power. We're going to actually calibrate for our headset height, and now I am the exact height. And usually once you do that, you'll want to go back to Magic and just disable that magic power so that we're not inadvertently running it when we don't actually want to. Okay. And another thing you should know is if you are using the OpenVR advanced settings by any chance, this actually has what's called a floor fix, which we will often use in most VR games to automatically fix our height on the fly. You never want to use floor fix in Enderal VR because the floor fix option is actually going to cause problems with the VR IK mod. So you never want to calibrate your height from here. You always want to calibrate your height using that VR IK calibration power that is actually in game. The next thing you should note is that if you look at the HUD, The HUD is actually very small. I actually decreased the compass size and I decreased the text and the font size of the HUD by installing a mod called Smaller HUD. If you don't like the small compass and if you don't like the fact that the text is a little bit smaller, you can actually just untick Smaller HUD in your Mod Organizer 2 mod list, and then you'll have all of the default sizes back. But I kind of like having everything smaller. I think it just makes the game a little bit more immersive. Another thing that is kind of fun is I actually have this game pre-configured for scoped bows. Now, I don't think that there are any scoped bows in Enderal, but you can spawn them from the council. And I actually have a write-up in my readme.txt file, which you'll find in the video's description below, where I have all the commands that you can enter into the council if you want to spawn in a scoped bow. So, for example, one bow that we can use that has a scope is Angie's bow. So we can actually spawn that in our game by simply hitting the council button, and then we're going to actually type player dot add item space the code for Angie's bow. In this case it is 000 C C392. Okay. Then you're going to put in how many bows you want. We only really want one, so we will hit enter. And we now have Angie's bow. So I will go to my inventory now, and I will equip Angie's bow. And this is actually really cool. We have a scope on our bow, which we can use to aim. And we have a rat that I can do some target practice with here. And it's very easy to aim with the bow. Another thing that's kind of cool too is we have a dual wield block mod installed, which allows us to block with our melee weapons. We can also use the weapon throw mod, which we have installed, to actually throw our weapons. And we've got a really cool kind of force pullback that we can do there too. But we can just flick our wrists and throw our weapon. Then we can use the trigger buttons to retract our melee weapon. Very, very cool. And another thing that's really cool is we go back to our items screen here, and we can also equip a real compass using the Navigate VR mod. So we can actually navigate using a real compass. Now there are actual real maps in this game, but they're all for Skyrim. Unfortunately, there are actually no functional maps for any of the Enderal specific locations, unfortunately. Now, another thing that I absolutely love about Skyrim is the fact that it has some amazing mods for handling weather. So right now we are running the RAS mod along with the Pouring Rain mod. This gives us very, very dense rain effects during weather conditions, and it also gives us a really, really cool water droplet effect. It's sort of like Metroid Prime when you have water hitting your visor, and it gives you a droplet effect in your vision. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And of course, we also have the VR IK mod running, which gives us a full player body with inverse kinematics. Very, very cool. And we also have the fantastic Higgs mod running, which gives us gravity gloves when we don't have any weapons equipped. So if I come over here, we'll see we have some objects, and everything has real-time physics, just like Half-Life Alyx. So I can walk over here to this bottle here on the shoreline. And I can actually pick it up with gravity gloves. Very awesome. And everything, again, has physics. I can actually pass this off. I can juggle it if I want, and I can actually, throw it here like a football. And it has realistic physics, very similar to the Source engine. Very, very awesome. And if I want to, say, pick an item up and put it in my inventory, I can just walk up to something. I can pick it up with my gravity gloves, and I can just put it behind my back like that, and it will be added to my inventory. Also, if you need to use your bow and arrow, it's very similar, where after you fire an arrow, you can actually reach right behind your back, and you can grab another arrow, and then you can put it in your bow. So that's all handled via the realistic archery mod. And finally, last but not least, one of my favorite new additions in terms of new Skyrim mods is we have the spell wheel mod. So let's say that we have magic spells that we love casting all the time. We can actually go to our menu. We can actually equip our favorite spells with the B button. This will favorite them, and it will add them to a spell wheel menu. So now when I hold down my trigger buttons, we actually get a loading wheel of all of our favorited spells. This makes it very easy to actually select our favorite spells without having to actually use the menu. And finally, there is one last feature I'm going to show you guys before we wrap up this video. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. This is also modded with the Dragonborn Speaks Naturally mod, which allows us to actually talk to non-player characters just using speech in real life, using the microphone built into our VR headsets. So I can actually turn around here and I can talk to Finn. What about my eyes?
There's something peculiar about you. I don't know how else to say it. I would examine you myself, but we don't have the right equipment with us. So if I were you, I'd ask a priest in Riverville to have a look at you. Who knows? Maybe you caught something in that temple.
Can I trade some goods with you? I found some things in the ruins.
Yeah, why not? Show me what you've got. Maybe I have some things you can use.
So what's really cool there is I didn't even have to actually touch anything on my controller. I was able to just talk to Finn using my voice. Every now and then it's a little finicky and it may not register the speech, but it seems to usually work, really well. I just find it to be a really cool mod. It really adds a lot of immersion to the game, especially when you're playing it in VR. Well guys, I think that pretty much should be a wrap for this video. I hope you found it helpful. I think that should be everything you really need to know to get started playing Enderal Forgotten Stories in VR. I'd advise you keep an eye on nexusmods.com. Skyrim VR has an amazing modding community. They're constantly evolving the game and making improvements with new mods and updated mods all the time. So I hope you guys have a blast playing this game in VR.